Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing, its jaws opening wide as it prepared to bite my face off. Easy. When he was close to me, I elbowed it in the chest and sent it sprawling. Then, I stomped its head to kill it for sure before running toward Miss Rika and Suko, who had already moved forward. The three of us were like the spearhead, leading the way for the evacuation truck and Leon's team, mainly because we had me and Suko who were proficient with swords. Miss Rika positioned herself together with Leon's team when we reached the open space of a highway. The secure route is ahead. Follow the plan and we'll be able to escape from here safely. Leon explained through the communication device given to us by the soldiers. He added, a bomb will detonate and destroy this place in 5 minutes. We have to move as far as possible. What the hell? You never told me about the bomb. I shouted angrily. It was dangerous to know it so late. Leon turned his face toward me and shouted back, you didn't need to know. And you should be glad that I even let you know. Shit. I cursed. While I knew why he hid the fact about the bomb, it was still frustrating for me. He probably wanted to avoid me panicking. The reason why he told me about it now was because my adrenaline was at an all-time high. I would rather kill those zombies than panicking. And he was so damn right. I had no time to think about the bomb. Our evacuation had started, the trucks moved one by one. There were a total of 10 trucks to evacuate as many people as possible. Considering the bomb would explode in 5 minutes, the range probably wasn't that big. I guessed it to be around 1 km only. And knowing Leon, he probably had the team set them in a way that would block these zombies from leaving the quarantine zone. We had moved 1 km away from the zone, but we had to cover 500 more meters if we wanted to be safe. So, this would be quite hard. Key, focus. Miss Rika's voice brought me back from my thinking. More zombies are coming from the side. Looking around, I noticed a crowd of zombies running toward us. Some of them were crawling at a fast speed, their long tongues hanging low. Fucking lickers. They were here. Miss Rika, target those with exposed brains. They are lickers, and their strength can allow them to rip metal apart. I quickly warned her. Among us, she was the one who could shoot them with good accuracy. I could see around 3 to 5 of them among the zombies. Got it. Trusting what I said, Miss Rika seemed to say something to Leon before taking a prone position while zombies still poured onto us. Is she crazy? A thought flashed into my mind before I focused. Right, she wasn't that crazy. She trusted the soldiers under Leon to cover for her. As I cut the zombies down with Suko, the soldiers also moved into formation to protect Miss Rika and her group from getting attacked. They provided suppressive fire and shot the zombies that were too close to the truck and the sniper team. And then, bang, bang, bang. The first 2 lickers had their head shot and their bodies fell down, their brains scattered around them. They twitched for a moment before becoming completely still. The third licker, who had jumped high, also got his head penetrated, creating a small hole in the middle of its head. The fourth one had his skull blown apart. And the last licker? It was fortunate enough to dodge a direct headshot, but its leg was blown away, making it stumble. Everything was taken care of. Now we just had to run. Chapter 115, New Safe Zone. Evacuation zones were basically safe houses for survivors. They provided protection, shelter, food, water, and medicine to those who needed it. They also had guards and other facilities like medical tents or even a makeshift hospital. The place we were moving to was located a bit away from the quarantine zone. Based on what I heard from Leon as we moved away from the crowd of zombies, this evacuation point was located around a few km from where we were. It was supposed to be built secretly and they planned to move everyone here after they had secured it. But since the undead breached the fence and attacked us, we were forced to evacuate early. The bomb will go off soon. Leon looked at his watch, which showed a countdown timer. Everyone, move. We don't have time. We were still running through the deserted city when the explosion happened. A bright flash of light appeared behind us, followed by a thundering noise that shook everything. It caused everyone nearby to stop moving for a moment as they watched the blast. The explosion was visible even though we had ran far from the place where the bomb was planted. Black smoke rose above the area where it exploded. I was worried if Saya or Miss Shizuka were hurt in the explosion, or if there were casualties among our team members or other teams who had gone out of the base before us. What a big explosion. Suko exclaimed as she joined me, sheathing her sword into the scabbard. All the zombies here are running to that place as soon as it blew up. I can see that too. I answered her. It's pretty clear that zombies were attracted to the big explosion, which made it easy for us to escape. Come on. Miss Rika beckoned, let's go. It's safer there than here. We nodded in agreement. Our journey had been smooth so far without any incident, except for the occasional zombie encounters along our way. Luckily, none of us had been bitten yet. We arrived in the new evacuation zone after an hour or two. There were soldiers waiting at the gate to welcome us in the caged area. I could see a lot of people inside the evacuation zone already. Some of them were resting and others were working on something. Some of them seemed injured but most of them looked healthy. The gate was open for our arrival and we drove inside. As soon as I stepped out of the car, I saw Sai and Miss Shizuka waving at us. I was glad to see them safe, as was Suko. Before I went to greet them, I looked around the evacuation zone. Compared to the previous evacuation zone, this place was way bigger, maybe around twice or 3 times the size of the old one. It's not surprising to me since the old one was a makeshift evacuation point, hastily built to accommodate the influx of people. Meanwhile, this one had been prepared ahead of time and it's even properly built. The fence around the area was made of concrete blocks and metal bars, unlike the previous fence that consisted of metal wires. The security was also tighter, with a group of guards standing near each corner of the wall. Aside from that, I could see many buildings within the compound itself. Some were used for sheltering refugees while some served as medical facilities and even administrative offices. There was even an open field where children could play. This place felt more like a refugee camp. I am glad to see you safe. I greeted both Miss Shizuka and Saya with a smile. Humphrey. It seems you're safe. Saya huffed and threw her face away, but I could see relief in her eyes. Foo-fa-foo, we arrived first. Miss Shizuka added, but... Where is Rika? Isn't she with you? Well, she went off somewhere earlier. Unlike me and Suko who had nothing to do, Miss Rika had to deal with reports and stuff and was now probably at the administrative office. I didn't know what kind of discussion she was having there. It might be about how things were going on or what they planned to do next, but it wasn't my business. All I had to do now was rest until someone called for me. Anyway, after exchanging a few more words with Miss Shizuka and Saya, we headed toward our new living area. It's one of many temporary shelters built inside the compound. There was no individual room, and instead, everyone had to sleep together. But at least we got to have our own bed and a blanket. We entered our new room and settled in. 5 beds were prepared, enough for us. At least no one joined us here. I guess the last bed was for Miss Rika, seeing there was a locker for our vest and weapons in this room. I put my backpack down beside the bed, feeling a bit exhausted. The softness of the mattress was welcoming to me after running and killing for so long. I was also sweaty. Sleepiness came to me but my mind told me that I needed to clean up first. And I was thinking about doing so when the door suddenly opened. Is Busujima here? A man entered the room, looking around until his gaze met mine. Yes, that's you. You need to come with me. What? Where? An important person wants to see you. He answered, gesturing for me to follow. Please, it's urgent. The girls looked at the man and me, clearly worried. But I couldn't do anything but follow the man's request. After all, we're in a military camp now and they had power over us civilians. I left the room, following the man. He led me to the administration office and I could tell from the way he moved that the person who asked for me must be pretty high-ranking. We walked through the hallway and reached the end of the corridor where the office was located. I was asked to enter and when I stepped inside the office, I noticed that it was actually quite big. Albert Wesker sat there along with Miss Rika and Leon, facing an old man in a suit. The old man had a stern expression on his face, and his eyes were sharp and piercing. The man that called for me left after he had brought me here. It seemed like the situation here wasn't really good. The old man had an expressionless face as he stared at me coldly, and he seemed to be a high-ranking military officer. Either that or someone very important, as there was a United States flag on the table. Just as I guessed earlier. Gee, let me introduce him. Miss Rika stood up from her seat and spoke. This man is General Adams. He's the commander of the entire United States Army and the one who oversees this evacuation zone. You may address him as Sir Adams if you want. The man looked at me, studying my features closely. I didn't move a muscle nor show any emotions. I just kept looking straight into his eyes without blinking. Finally, he smiled. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Adams, and I am the general in charge of this area. Chapter 116, Joining as a Hired Arm. Long story short, I had been asked to join the force as a hired armed civilian. I was reluctant at first, but I accepted because I wanted to keep an eye on them. I had an inkling that the umbrella was somehow connected to the military. However, it didn't mean that the US military as a whole was bad. General Adams seemed to be an okay guy, and so were the soldiers around here. I was hired as a part of their elite group, and my salary was paid in rations and food. Usually the ration would be divided by the number of people in the family, so if someone lived alone then they would get fewer rations compared to those who lived together. In the beginning, our food supplies were very low due to lack of resources. The soldiers were the first ones to get food since they had to protect everyone, and then came civilians. As a result, we only got one meal per day, and even that was barely enough to sustain lives. Of course I didn't need to worry about my own food because I still had my system to feed myself and the girls. I also gave a few rations to Miss Shizuka and Saya to make up for the lack of supply, though it was barely noticeable to my stockpile of supplies. Anyway, General Adams had been kind to me by increasing the ration for us, even though he knew I could take care of myself. I already planned to get involved in the army, so it's better for me to have a strong relationship with him. Also, it seemed like the supply chain was restored because of our move here. And thanks to the increased food ration, we were eating 3 times a day now. When I explained it to the girls, Suko and Miss Shizuka didn't really react much, but Saya had a different reaction. "Are you crazy?" the genius Pinkat asked incredulously. She then continued, "You're joining the military now. Do you want to die?" "Hey, it's not that bad." I tried to explain, but she wasn't listening anymore. She just sighed deeply and turned away, crossing her arms angrily. "Just for food? I don't care if we only eat once a day," Saya said in a low tone. "What matters is our safety. We need to survive first. If you put your life on the line, then that defeats our purpose of going here." I wanted to reply to her, but I knew she was right. We didn't have the luxury to eat 3 meals a day. Our priority is to stay alive. "Well, you have a point." I admitted defeat and smiled bitterly. She looked at me and raised her eyebrow. "So? What do you think?" I shrugged my shoulders and said honestly, "I don't know. You're not helping." Saya sighed again. "I'm just worried about you. What if something bad happens to us? What if you die out there? How am I supposed to survive without you? How are we supposed to live on?" She sounded scared and lonely. Her eyes were filled with sadness and she hugged herself tightly as if trying to stop shaking from fear. Seeing her like that, I could only hug her and try my best to calm her down. She buried her face into my chest, and I felt warm tears wetting my shirt. What a fool I was. I only thought about myself, not considering the feelings of the girls around me. They would be very lonely if something bad were to happen to me. "Don't go," she murmured in a low tone. "I don't want you to leave us behind." "Okay, I promise that I'll be fine. I won't die or leave you all. Please," she pleaded in a weak voice, sounding like a little child. My hand stroked her head lovingly, trying to reassure her. I whispered into her ear, telling her that I wouldn't let anything happen to us no matter what, and I promised that I'd keep her safe and happy. A few moments later, she stopped crying. Her sobs subsided and she lifted her face to look up at me, traces of tears still visible in her eyes. They sparkled brightly and she gave me a faint smile. She was still sniffling, but at least she stopped crying now. I gently wiped the tears on her cheek and gave her a kiss on her forehead. "You can stop now. I hope you understand how important you are to us," she said softly. "I don't know why, but I felt scared thinking you would die. That's not good at all. I'm sorry. I felt like an idiot for not thinking of the consequences of my actions. I had to make sure I would survive, even if it meant that I would have to work harder. For the girls." She looked away with a pout and muttered, "Humphrey, I bet you won't listen to me anyway. But I can't really stop you from doing stupid things. I'll be more careful. Please do." She pulled back and walked away, leaving me alone in the room. I stared at the closed door behind her and sighed. She really was worried about me. I didn't want to disappoint her by getting myself killed. However, I was in a dilemma now. What Saya said to me was true, and I didn't know whether joining the military force was a wise decision or not. I could always quit later if things went wrong. My danger sense, the unreliable choice system, never showed up since I returned from Raccoon City. Which meant that everything was normal for now. No danger yet, and I was pretty safe. There was no reason to decline this offer. I could use the extra rations to buy some stuff or even trade for some valuable goods. It's better than just staying here and doing nothing. Besides, the money could come in handy when I decided to leave the military later on. And I also needed to know what they were doing in the quarantine zone, especially about their connection with the Umbrella Corporation. Civilians wouldn't get information needed, so this was a chance. A chance for me to learn about the truth behind all these. "Saya, respecting a man's wish is a must for a girl." Suko's voice rang from the side. She had listened to the entire exchange and decided to give us some advice. And brother has his own plan, too. If he wants to join the military force, then he has his own reasons for that. Saya turned to Suko, glaring at her. I know that. It's just. She paused for a moment before continuing, I'm worried about him. I nodded and added, yes, and we need the extra rations to survive. If we stay here, we will eventually die from starvation or disease. There's no guarantee of survival, even with my ability. I wanted to help everyone as much as I could, but I also needed to protect myself. Saya sighed once more, shaking her head in exasperation. Well, whatever. Just make sure to tell me what happens out there every day. I nodded again. Sure, I'll keep you all updated. It's not like I will leave you girls too. And I might need your help later. She seemed satisfied with my answer and nodded. Good enough. As long as I get to see you alive. Suko chuckled, amused by Saya's behavior. You really care about brother, huh? She said teasingly. Shut up. Saya shouted, her face flushed red. I just don't want him to die like an idiot. That's it. Don't get any wrong ideas. Suko giggled. You don't have to be embarrassed. We all know you like him a lot. I can tell that much. I said it's not like that. Suko laughed again. The atmosphere inside our room was lively, but I was still worried about my situation. I had no idea what I should do next, and I didn't know what kind of things would happen to me in the future. The only thing I was sure of was that I would never abandon the girls and that I needed to stay safe myself. And the choice to join the army seemed to be a good one, especially if it meant getting information from within. However, make your choice, I might have underestimated it too much. Chapter 117, Assurance Fuck. I cursed under my breath. I thought that I had gotten rid of this unreliable system. It had been inactive since I came out from the quarantine zone, but it chose now to show itself again, when I was just about to relax a bit. And there were two options. 1. Being hired is good. You have food, shelter, protection, and everything else you want. But you're not ready, so you think it's better to rest for a few days before going on a mission. Choose to rest and refuse the next mission coming to you. Reward, 250 shop points. 2. A brave man never says no. A mission is perfect for you to prove your bravery and worth. It will also give you a chance to gain more information about what the government is hiding. Take this mission and go on a dangerous path. Choose to take the mission that will be offered to you by your superior tomorrow. Reward, 500 shop points plus 2 strength. This choice was a fork path where the first one led to the path I chose and the other led to another one. I had to choose wisely, or else I might regret my decision. Whether I should take this first mission or not. According to the timeline, it might be a mission where Wesker would try to trap the STARS team. A very dangerous situation with Wesker at the front line, a bioweapon in his hand. But, the Raccoon City outbreak had been finished. The mission was supposed to happen before it, but now that it had ended, I couldn't see how it could possibly be the same as what was written in the original story. I was the only variable in the timeline. At this point I could only guess. If I refused to go, then the story would change even further and I might miss out on something important. However, if I went, then I would risk my life to save the main character and his friends. I had to think about my own safety too. Fuck. I scratched my head in frustration. My life wasn't easy. Not at all. Sitting alone on the bench in front of our room, I looked at the starry sky. Because no light had been turned on, I could see everything in great detail, even the moon. The air was clean, the smell of blood was no longer present, and I could feel the coldness of night. It felt so peaceful. There was still no zombies inside the evacuation zone. But outside? It's a different story. Zombies roamed everywhere. They could be seen wandering around, or just standing still, waiting for someone to attack them. Umbrella Corporation and the rival companies schemed against each other to get data. That data then would be used to create a bioweapon, a monstrous creature that could kill everything with its strength and speed. What about Hot World? At this point, I wasn't sure. Maybe the zombies occurs naturally and there was no man behind them. Or maybe, they had been created by the government for military purposes and something had gone wrong. The existence of the third company might be possible, and the virus could be something they created. I could only speculate about this. The only thing I could be sure of was that zombies were roaming around, attacking people, and eating brains. And that I was in danger of getting eaten by them too. And I didn't want to die yet. What the hell should I do? I sighed, looking up at the dark night sky, hoping to see the stars twinkling down on me. To be honest, I also have another goal, which was to meet up with my current parents. Yes, Busujima's parents were still alive. I confirmed this information with General Adams but had yet to tell the girls about this. Suko didn't seem to be bothered about meeting our parents, so I never brought it up all this time. For now, I just wanted to enjoy this moment. I breathed in and exhaled, taking a deep breath to calm down my mind. After a few minutes passed by, I closed my eyes, and let my thoughts flow freely in my mind. Then, a penny for your thoughts? Suko suddenly appeared out of nowhere. She leaned against the wall beside the door, her hands folded behind her back, her sword strapped on her hip. Her face showed concern as she looked at me curiously. Whenever you sit alone, there is always a problem. You can tell me what it is. Her gaze shifted towards me and her lips curved upwards into a smile. She had been observing my behavior closely. I smiled bitterly and said, "Am I that predictable?" She chuckled. "Only because we're close. Otherwise, I wouldn't know." "Then I will tell you." I patted the spot beside me on the bench. "Sit here and I'll explain it to you." She sat down on the bench and I told her what happened, my worries, as well as the future activities. Suko listened to my story carefully, nodding from time to time. She was interested in my explanation and I could tell that she understood everything that I had said. "That means the world will change completely," Suko muttered thoughtfully, looking at the stars twinkling in the sky. "Yes." I nodded. "And I don't know what to do now." Unlike the quarantine zone from before, Wesker wasn't the highest authority here. I doubted he would place a listening device everywhere. Here, he was just STAR's leader and nothing more than that. I had heard from General Adams that they would gather soon. Which meant I could meet Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine soon. Maybe even Claire, Chris' younger sister. That made me wonder where Miss Rika was right now. Maybe she was still inside that conference room with General Adams, Leon, and Wesker. Anyway, I had to make my decision tomorrow. This was the first time the system gave me such a long time to decide, so I wanted to make sure I didn't regret it. Right now, we haven't reached the year 2000 yet. The experiment on viruses and bioweapons would only get crazier from here on out. Maybe this choice would lead me to a peaceful lifestyle or a dangerous one. Either way, I was already on their radar, so I might as well go all the way and fight against Umbrella Corporation. However, the problem was how to deal with Wesker. As a smart villainous character, his actions were unpredictable. And he had his eyes on me ever since I arrived at Raccoon City, which made it even more difficult for me to move around without being watched. If he found out that I was trying to sabotage him, then it's over for me. No matter how strong I became, I couldn't protect the girls if I weren't there. So, Suko, take this. Chapter 118. Behind the destruction, I secretly bought the 5,000 points zombie serum and gave it to Suko. It was a metal syringe with green liquid inside, filled to the brim. "This is?" Suko asked, looking at me curiously while holding the syringe in her hand. "A virus that will mutate our genetics. From what I read, this will give you speed fast enough to travel 100 meters in under a second and the power to lift a car easily." After I explained it, her eyes widened in shock, her mouth opened slightly. She looked at me in disbelief. Then, she shook her head. How? She stammered, unable to speak properly. I smiled dryly at her reaction, then continued, "I hid it. However, I don't know the side effects and I don't want to give you this, but I have no other choice. If we're in a situation that requires it, then I'll trust your judgment. I hope you won't have to use it." I trusted her decision. Among us, she was always the most cold-headed one. My sister wouldn't make a rash decision even when she was under immense pressure. She had her own moral compass and always knew what she had to do. She stared at me in silence for a moment before speaking up. "You're really giving me a responsibility that is beyond my ability. If something happens to me, what would happen to you? You know how dangerous this is and yet, you still want to do this?" I sighed and said, "Yes. That's why this is just assurance and nothing more. But I'm sure that this won't be needed. I really hope so." The choice didn't tell me what mission it is. Which meant, the mission itself might not be that dangerous. In the worst-case scenario, I would have to deal with some tyrants. And that's where my 40 strength points came in handy. I was glad I chose to risk myself in the past to prepare for today. Right now, I might be able to clash with Tyrant head-on. I didn't know how strong the real Tyrant was, but I would find out soon. Suko was quiet after I told her all of this. She just sat on the bench and looked up at the sky. The night was still young, the air was fresh, and it was a beautiful evening. The two of us enjoyed this silent moment together. The only sounds I heard were crickets chirping, and the rustling of leaves from trees nearby. I didn't feel bored though. However, that didn't change the heavy atmosphere that lingered around us. We instinctively realized the danger of moving to this evacuation zone and the future that awaits us. General Adams sat in front of 2 STARS members as well as Minami Rika, a prospect that they would recruit. The table was set with a cup of coffee, and they drank it leisurely as the tension in the room grew. The discussion with Tki had ended a few minutes ago, and they had just finished discussing their plans. The STARS team had come here to help the evacuation successfully. Their leader, Albert Wesker, was a genius in this kind of thing and had led the STARS team into many missions. He was the one who planned the evacuation too after getting information that the zombies were getting out of the quarantine zone. And now, they had to discuss what they should do next. There is a strange movement in the mansion near the destroyed Raccoon City. Wesker started the discussion by presenting a document. All members of Bravo team dispatched to the area were killed by the creatures in there. I managed to survive by using an anti-bio weapon. There were also other strange things that I discovered there. What do you mean? Leon asked curiously. Bioweapon. Umbrella's failed experiments, creatures that can be controlled by certain sound frequencies. Wesker said and paused. He put down a paper he held. That place is an Umbrella lab, I am certain. We can gather proof that the outbreak was caused by Umbrella there. Umbrella Corporation? General Adams narrowed his eyes and leaned forward, interested. Yes. I will lead Alpha Team and infiltrate the lab. We need to know what the company is doing there. Leon's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Umbrella Corporation? Is it really their fault? Most likely. I haven't gathered enough evidence to conclude anything yet, but it's almost certain. Wesker pushed his sunglasses up, and then he turned to Minami. Rika, can we count on your cooperation, Miss Minami? Call me Rika. The sniper woman said with a stern expression. I will cooperate if you give me some authority. I want that boy under me, kept my friends safe and protected. Understood. I will assign him under your squad. Wesker nodded and looked at General Adams. Sir, I will ask permission from you. I need to take him to our mission. We can't go to that mansion with our small numbers. The general thought for a while. He knew that if they didn't stop the company now, more people would suffer from their evil deeds. They needed all the manpower they could get their hands on. Permission granted. General Adams said. Thank you. Wesker smiled. But, General Adams added, if there are casualties, you have to take full responsibility. And you can't force him to go with you, as he's a hired arm and not an official part of your team. Understood. Wesker replied, we'll make sure to bring them back safely. Good. Now let's discuss our plan in detail. Chapter 119, Good Boy. Late at night, I suddenly felt thirsty and wanted to drink water. So, I went outside the building, heading to the well in the center of the camp. I didn't feel sleepy tonight. It was like a sudden urge that made my eyes open, so I had to walk outside. I didn't expect anyone else to be awake at this hour either. However, someone was in front of me when I was about to open the faucet of the well. A woman with dark skin and purple hair washed her face in front of the well. She had taken her shirt off and the tank top under her uniform was wet from the water she used. It seemed like I had disturbed her and her attention turned to me. Her hand stopped, but her eyes didn't move away from me. She just stared at me without moving an inch. Miss Rika? I said, breaking the silence. She nodded at me and asked, Gay, what are you doing at this hour? Shouldn't you be asleep by now? Ah, yeah. I scratched my head awkwardly. I couldn't sleep and wanted to get some water. What are you doing though, Miss Rika? Oh, this. She pointed at her wet face and clothes, then smiled slightly. I was thinking about something. We just finished our discussion and... Well, I should tell you the decision now. It involved you a little bit, after all. Something that involved me? What would it be? A mission? My heart beat faster as I thought about the possibilities. I had made my decision of the choice after talking with Suko earlier, but this still surprised me a bit. After all, the choice told me the offer would come tomorrow. Oh. I muttered and waited for her to continue her explanation. Rather than explaining it straight to me, she gestured for me to follow her. We moved to some alley between tents to not get seen by others. I didn't really understand what she wanted to say, but I trusted her. Once we reached a safe distance away from anyone, she stopped walking. We were alone here. What's the matter, Miss Rika? I asked. And she took out a cigarette from her breast pocket. Do you have a lighter? She asked me. You know that I don't smoke. I shrugged my shoulders and took out a lighter I always carried in case of an emergency. Miss Rika smirked upon seeing it. She probably knew that someone like me, who was always cautious, would have something to create fire in case I needed it. I lit her cigarette for her and she exhaled a puff of white smoke, looking satisfied. Her expression became serious again, and then she spoke up. A mission will start tomorrow, and we have a very tight time schedule. Miss Rika said as she smoked the cigarette, we'll leave the camp at midnight, and our destination will be the Arklay mansion. The mansion again. I was so done with this place. I thought it would happen before the Raccoon City outbreak, But I guessed wrong. This meant that everything had changed, and the story was completely different. But why? What exactly changed? Was it just a coincidence? Or did something happen to cause such a drastic change in the timeline? Whatever the case may be, there's no denying that things are starting to look bad now. We have a very important mission to do. The mission is to gather data and proof of the corporation's wrongdoings. You are asked to be on my team. In your team? I asked curiously. I think I need to explain our organization to you first. She took another puff from her cigarette and exhaled a long breath of white smoke before continuing. We, the Stars, are a special forces unit. We have 2 teams, Alpha and Bravo. I'll be in charge of Bravo's second team and lead it. Miss Rika's explanation surprised me. However, I didn't show any kind of reaction and waited for her to continue her story. After all, it was best to let someone explain everything first instead of interrupting them with questions that might lead to more complicated answers. The main Bravo team will be led by Albert Wesker. They will be the ones who enter the mansion while we will be on standby, in case there is any trouble. But knowing him, he will make us go in if there are too many obstacles. And we might have to go through a forest filled with creatures to reach there. Miss Rika paused, taking another puff from her cigarette. Your task is simple. Just follow my order and you will be safe. Safe? We won't enter the mansion and are on standby instead, so it's safe. She repeated her words again, making sure I got her point clearly. I judged your shooting skill is up to standard for this mission. We will provide cover fire in case of emergency. Of course, that's if you accept this mission. As a hired arm, I had my own choice on whether to take on a mission or not. Fortunately, I wouldn't be needed inside the mansion itself. Maybe we would be the one to cover and secure their way out, a support squad. That was a lot better. However, there's still a risk. We didn't know what we're going against. What if it's something more dangerous than what they had anticipated? It would be disastrous if that happened. So, do you want to take the mission? She asked me with a smile, as if knowing that I would definitely agree. Still. What's in it for me, Miss Rika? I asked with an unimpressed look on my face. She raised an eyebrow at my question. You're asking me to join your mission, but there has to be a reward. I want to know what kind of compensation you can offer me if I accept your invitation, I stated firmly. She looked thoughtful for a moment before responding. We will increase the food rations and also give you a new weapon you can use in the mission. I am talking about a PSG-1 rifle. A PSG-1? I couldn't hold back the surprised expression that came out from my face. She was talking about a semi-automatic sniper rifle. The power this rifle had was above that of the bolt-action sniper rifle or my current one. Not only that, it could cover more range and kill liquor in one shot. Miss Rika was currently using this rifle and she offered to use the same model. If I got that, then my chance of survival would be increased. I wouldn't have to worry about ammo shortage either as I could easily buy more from the shop. I didn't know if she planned to buy me one or to let me borrow it, but that was already enough for me. With this kind of rifle, the chance to survive in the future would increase. It seems you're interested. She grinned after seeing my surprised expression. I smiled and answered her. Yes. I'm in, Miss Rika. Good boy. She smiled. Chapter 120, Good Boy's Reward and a good boy deserves a reward, right? Miss Rika threw her cigarette to the ground and got closer. I instinctively stepped back as if I was in front of a predator. Unlike other women, she had this strange aura, like she wanted to devour me whole. She walked toward me slowly, her hips swayed sexily, her breasts jiggled with each step. It wasn't hard for me to guess what she wanted, especially after seeing her lustful gaze. She wanted to fuck. But why now? I had no clue. She was probably horny and wanted to take me, which was a bit troublesome. Currently we have a rather vague relationship with each other. She saw me having sex with Miss Shizuka and the others and even joined once. So, I had no idea what to call her other than just a comrade in a zombie apocalypse or a colleague in the organization. In a way, we had a relationship that was a bit too close to be considered normal. And right now she was getting even closer to me, her eyes focused on mine. I gulped and my heart pounded loudly against my chest. What, are you nervous? She smiled at my nervousness. A little. I replied honestly. I didn't want to have a complicated relationship with her, especially when our life was on the line in every mission. However, it didn't matter in the end. Miss Rika was a beautiful mature woman and she could get anyone she wanted. And the target was me this time. She probably didn't want to wait anymore after the previous tease. For someone who had sex with 3 women, you are still quite inexperienced, she smirked at me and pushed me back onto a wall. Just relax and enjoy yourself. I will give you a special service before the mission starts. Miss Rika stepped forward again, and I felt something soft touching my chest. I could smell the faint scent of tobacco on her body as well as some kind of perfume mixed together. Her chest pressed tightly against my chest. The sensation sent shivers throughout my body. I looked into her eyes and found them staring back at me passionately. It seemed that there was no escape. Miss Rika was really eager to taste me, which made me wonder if she was sexually frustrated or something. Well, everyone would be when they were about to go on a life-or-death mission. But this one was truly an unexpected development, one I never even considered before. "I'm not forcing you," she suddenly said. "If you're really reluctant then just say no and I'll leave. We will forget this ever happened." I shook my head and responded. "No. It's fine, Miss Rika. You're a very beautiful lady and I can see myself doing a lot worse than having a one-night stand with you. What I don't like is... well, it was just a one-night stand. It would be awkward to meet you in the future." She winked and leaned forward to whisper in my ear. "It's more fun that way, Gee. Damn. I was doomed. I couldn't say anything more and just let things flow. She would do anything she wanted anyway and it would be pointless to resist. At least she didn't force herself to me and that made it easier for me to accept. Her body was so close to me now that I could feel her warmth radiating off of hers. Soft breath tickled my ear as she tiptoed to reach me. "I'll give you a little treat first, Gee. Don't worry." "What treat?" I played along with her game. I was a bit reluctant, but that was part of it. I knew I would cave in eventually. "You'll know it soon enough," Miss Rika whispered seductively into my ear before moving down. Her hand caressed my body until it reached my groin. She then grabbed the zipper and pulled it down slowly. I watched as she did that, enjoying the sight of her unzipping my pants. The feeling of her hand gently touching me through the fabric made me harden. Once my underwear was exposed, she smiled and rubbed her palm over my erection. "Oh my," she cooed while rubbing my cock gently. "You're already this big?" She rubbed my shaft up and down while watching me closely. Her fingers were skillfully stroking me and it felt great, almost like she was playing a musical instrument. No, maybe a gun in her case. Her hand left my erection and she began pulling down my underwear, exposing my throbbing penis completely. Her eyes widened at its size as if she didn't expect me to be this large. She licked her lips in anticipation. "It's big and hard," Miss Rika said. Then, she wrapped both of her hands around the thick organ and started pumping me up and down again. "Now I understand why Shizuka is so infatuated with you. I would be addicted to if I was a high schooler." Her warm hands were massaging my shaft up and down while she stared at it intently. She was a bit too excited for a simple handjob. But it's not like I disliked it. I was actually quite fond of her touch. The rough hand was something I had never experienced before, and it was quite arousing to see a grown-up woman stroking me. It felt good. "Do you like it?" "I love it." While not as good as my girl, or Suko in that note, Miss Rika was a mature and skilled woman. Her touch was slightly rough, but it made me feel amazing. She kept stroking my penis up and down with both of her hands. Her fingers caressed the length of my dick slowly, making it throb in delight. "Does it feel good? Does it feel good?" "Yeah, of course, it does. How could I deny that?" Her hand felt great, and her grip on my member made me groan. It was truly bliss. "Yes," I replied, my voice full of pleasure. I was getting more and more aroused as time passed. "Good." She smirked. "Do you want more, Dki? Or should I stop?" "Please do more." "All right. Then I will give you a special treat." "I hope you like it," she said as she gathered her hair and crouched. Chapter 121, Mature Woman's Charm. Now, Miss Rika's head was on the same level as my penis. I felt her warm breath against the tip of my cock. She blew some air on it before giving the head a lick. Then, she moved to the base and gave it a long lick, tasting me. Her tongue was hot and moist, but not unpleasantly so. She licked the underside of my cock, making her way back up to the head. Everything was done with her looking at me with upturned eyes, which made me even more aroused. The way she moved her tongue as if licking a lollipop was simply irresistible. Once she had reached the tip, she wrapped her lips around it and sucked gently. Her tongue continued swirling around my penis, and her hand pumped faster, increasing my pleasure further. MMMH. She hummed happily. Her warm, wet mouth enveloped the whole of my cock. She sucked me while moaning, her voice muffled by the dick inside her mouth. Saliva dripped out from the corner of her lips as she slurped and slobbered all over my length, bobbing her head back and forth. She used one hand to grab the bottom half of my member and jerked it furiously, her other hand playing with her pussy under her skirt. The sensation sent waves of pleasure coursing throughout my body. MMMH. She let out a sound that was somewhere between a moan and a whimper. Her lips were wrapped firmly around my cock, and she continued to suck and stroke me. I felt the pleasure building inside my balls and I was getting close. I gripped her head and pulled her closer to me, pushing myself further inside her mouth. Even when I did that, she didn't gag. Instead, she just took my entire shaft in her throat, letting it go all the way in until she was kissing my crotch. Then, she started to move, slowly at first, but then picking up speed as she got used to the rhythm. Her throat constricted around my dick and her tongue played with the underside of my cock. It was driving me insane. Warmth enveloped my entire body. My mind was going numb. Fuck. You're sucking me so hard. I growled and held onto her hair tightly. It feels so fucking amazing. I looked down at Ms. Rika and found her staring back at me. She winked and gave me a sexy smile before returning to work. Her mouth was moving at incredible speeds, taking me deeper and deeper into her. Soon enough, I was on the verge of climaxing. My cock plopped out of her mouth and she began to stroke it, most probably noticing that I was close. "I'll give you something even better," she said as she pumped me. Her free hand was playing with my balls. Miss Rika opened her mouth and stuck her tongue out. "Shoot your load, Dgi," she said, right into my face. I groaned, feeling my orgasm approaching. I grabbed her head and aimed my cock directly at her face. I didn't need any encouragement to shoot my load all over her beautiful features. She was jerking my cock off and I couldn't hold back anymore. Her mouth hung wide open as she stared at me with a hungry expression, waiting for my sperm. It only took a couple more seconds before the first spurt shot out from my penis and landed on her tongue, painting it white. But it didn't end there. Ropes after thick, sticky ropes of my cum splattered across her cheeks and forehead. She didn't even flinch and kept on stroking me. The last few shots splashed onto her nose and dripped onto her lips, making a mess on her face. "Fuck," I gasped. Her sexy dark skin was painted in my pearly white essence. My cum dripped down from her chin and fell on her tank top. But Miss Rika wasn't done. She pumped my shaft harder and faster, urging me to give her more of my cum. "Give it all to me," she moaned as she pumped me furiously. "Give me all your hot milk." She milked me until there was nothing left to shoot, leaving a big mess on her pretty face. Plenty of my cum entered her mouth, and she even scooped the remaining drops with her finger and ate them, licking them clean. I watched in awe as she swallowed the whole thing, cleaning her finger. Her mouth was open wide, and I could see my cum still coating her tongue. "Fuck," she whispered, licking the corner of her lips. "Your sperm is so hot. And it's a lot. Is it?" I asked. "I can shoot more than this though. But you know what I mean. Naughty boy." Miss Rika grinned at me before wiping her face with her tank top, not bothering with tissues or something like that. My cum made a huge stain on her white top. "That was a lot. And you're right, you can do better. But I'll let you save it for your girlfriend," she chuckled, looking satisfied. She stood up, her eyes locked into mine. "That's my service for now. If you do well in the mission, then you will get a bigger prize." "And what's the prize?" Her lips curled into a grin as she leaned toward my face. "I will ride you all night." Before I could reply, Miss Rika fixed her clothes and walked away, leaving me behind. I stared at her figure as she disappeared into the darkness. The only sound I could hear was the wind blowing through the trees around us. And the only trace of her was the smell of cigarettes and cum in the air. She was one crazy woman, and that wasn't something I disliked. But a relationship with her wasn't something I wanted either. Especially this kind of relationship where I didn't know what to call it. A fuck friend? She wasn't a friend, but I was willing to do it, even right now. I had to be careful with her and avoid her if I didn't want any trouble. "Are you done?" Just as I was about to fix my clothes, Suko appeared from the shadows with crossed arms. She looked at my dangling cock, which became limp after coming. I didn't expect Suko to appear out of nowhere. Like, we were in a dark alleyway with no light. There was no way I would see her unless she intentionally showed herself. "How much did you see?" I asked her. Chapter 122, comparing both of them. I saw how that woman went down on you. She smiled. It was quite something. Suko then approached me with her usual calm face and glanced at my cock once again. It twitched slightly under her gaze. She then looked up and met my eyes with her own. Our gaze locked for a few moments, and she leaned forward. "You know that you should ask us if you want a blowjob," she said in a serious voice. "We won't hesitate to please you." I sighed, knowing that she meant every word. She would never hesitate to please me. Suko then hugged me and rested her head on my shoulder, pressing her breasts against my body. "Do you want to compare?" she said, her voice low but firm. "Do you want to compare that woman and me?" Her hands reached down to grab my ass. She was hugging me so tightly that her large boobs squished against me. "I didn't do that to compare," I answered truthfully. "Maybe." Suko didn't believe my answer. "But I won't lose to her. I have my pride and I'm the best in everything. Including this." I gulped. What would Suko do? Hearing that, my cock twitched and hardened. I didn't need to answer because she already felt my reaction. Suko was an intelligent woman who could understand me better than anyone. She kissed me on the neck, making a sound that sounded like she was sucking on something sweet. Her hand then grabbed my cock and stroked it, giving me a hand job. "Are you ready to compare?" She pushed me to a wall and crouched in front of me. Right now, my cock was so hard that it could penetrate anything. Suko didn't waste time and quickly took it inside her mouth. She bobbed her head, letting my dick in and out of her mouth. I felt my penis getting harder as I felt the warm sensation of her mouth enveloping me. It was amazing. Just a moment before I thought Miss Rika's mouth was good, but Suko was better. Much better. I knew that Miss Rika's mouth was also amazing, but Suko's was in another level. I could only groan in pleasure, unable to say a word. I could feel my dick getting bigger and harder with each passing moment. I placed my hand on the back of her head, gripping her hair tightly as she continued to suck me. Sloppy sounds filled the dark alley, coming from Suko's mouth as she pleasured me. Her saliva dripped onto my thighs as she continued sucking my dick. She then took my entire length into her mouth until the tip reached the back of her throat. Her tongue swirled around the shaft while her lips wrapped around it, stimulating every part of it. My tip touched her throat as she sucked me, and it felt so good. I held her hair tighter and pushed my hips forward, forcing more of my length into her. Holding her head with both hands, I started to thrust my hips, pushing myself into her mouth even further. Suko didn't seem to mind, though. Even when her throat contracted around my dick and her saliva was dripping everywhere, she continued to suck me. "Shit. Suko, your throat is so fucking tight. MHMMH." She mumbled. With upturned eyes that looked begging for my cum, she moved back, my length slipped out from her mouth, her lips and chin wet with saliva. After a few seconds, she gasped for breath before continuing her work, this time moving her head back and forth as she sucked me. Tightly holding my dick in her hand, she moved her head back and forth while sucking on my dick, making wet noises with her mouth. My cock twitched in delight inside her mouth and I felt like I was about to blow any second now. "Suko. Fuck. You're too good at this. You taught me everything." Her tongue rolled over her lips. "Every time we did this, I learned something new. How you react when I did this and that, how your cock twitches in delight. All of it. I learned from the best, after all." I smiled. "It seems that you're a natural talent. Your teaching is very effective. I'm sure Sai and Miss Shizuka learned it quickly as well." She smiled back at me before continuing her blowjob. H&N slurping sound combined with delightful moans filled my ears. Suko's lips were tightly wrapped around the head of my penis. She began to lick my shaft with the tip of her tongue while her mouth sucked my length. The sensation sent shivers throughout my entire body. My muscles tensed as she worked me. My fingers gripped her hair even tighter. Then, I felt something soft. It was her left hand caressing my ballsack. "Come for me." I groaned loudly, unable to control myself. Suko's skill was overwhelming. It felt too damn amazing, especially with her caressing my balls. I thrust my hips, forcing my dick deeper inside her mouth. She let out a moan, but she didn't try to pull away. She continued to suck me, taking all of my shaft. And then, "Take this all, Suko." With that, I exploded into her mouth, spurting a large amount of cum into it. Thick, sticky ropes shot out of my urethra and into Suko's mouth. Her mouth filled to the brim and some spilled out. But even then, she still managed to take every drop that I had in store for her. Her left hand pumped the base of my dick, and her mouth continued sucking on my tip until there was nothing left. Unlike Miss Rika, she took everything inside her mouth, not leaving even a single drop behind. The sight of it made my cock throb harder, making it spurt even more sperm. Her eyes closed tightly as I filled her mouth and she swallowed the entire thing. Her mouth moved back and forth, and her throat tightened as she gulped it all down. Once she finished swallowing everything, she pulled back and licked her lips, making sure she didn't waste any of the precious liquid. "Thank you for the meal." Chapter 123, Mission Day. Gulping loudly, Suko wiped her lips with her finger. Her tongue rolled over the tip of her digit, cleaning it before she swallowed it. It was delicious. Suko licked the last bit of sperm that dripped from the tip. She sucked on it and pulled it into her mouth before releasing it from her mouth. "And you're still this hard. Amazing." I smirked. "Want to clean it?" "Yes." She quickly answered and took my whole length into her mouth again, letting her saliva clean it up before she pulled away. "I'll take it as a victory for you," I told her. "You're the best." Suko stood up and smiled triumphantly. "I'm the best in everything, so it's natural." Of course she was the best. I patted her head as she hugged me, her hands wrapping around my waist. I kissed her forehead, making her smile wider. "I'll give you a reward for winning the contest," I said to her. "Oh? What reward?" "You'll know it tonight," I smirked. "I'll fuck you senselessly. I'll make you scream louder than you ever screamed before." I'll look forward to that. We smiled at each other before I pulled away from the embrace and fixed my clothes. Suko's eyes lingered at my crotch as I tucked my erection back in my underwear. I zipped up my pants, letting it bulge. After that, we returned to the dorm and rested. The next day, early in the morning, I found myself entering a black van after saying goodbye to the girls. It had no windows, only 2 seats at the back and front, and there was no separation between those 2 rows of chairs. There was no one else here aside from us. Just Miss Rika and me. Are you ready? Am I ready? I asked back, where are the other team members? There are just us 2. Everyone has been briefed and ready for their part. Miss Rika smiled. I told them to give us space. We're going to do something important, after all. Unlike them, we will split off to secure our route. Our job is to secure the road that leads to the mansion, and the Alpha team will go through a different route. Listening to her explanation, I realized that this mission would be a lot harder compared to what I thought. We would have to face zombies head-on instead of just avoiding them like in the previous mission. Alright, I answered her. My new weapon? On the back with mine. You will like it. Miss Rika grinned confidently and put her hand on my thigh. And don't forget that I have a reward for you, Gi. If you perform well in the mission, I'll make you feel good. Sure, Miss Rika. I just played along. I had to admit though, it felt good being praised like this. The car began to move, leaving the evacuation center. No one checked us on our way out. I had to thank the stars for that. I didn't have to show my pass or explain where I went or anything. Our car moved smoothly, not stopping or slowing down even once. A few hours passed by as we continued driving. There weren't many cars around anymore, and I couldn't see a single human outside. It felt strange. Let me explain the mission details to you, Gi. Miss Rika suddenly spoke, her hands moving from my thighs and back to her own seat. Okay. Our mission, or more precisely my team, is to clear a route. We are to take the south route and make sure the path is secure for the main force who will arrive by helicopter. She explained and I got confused. If they went to the mansion using a helicopter, why should we clear their route? And why did we use car instead? Miss Rika chuckled after seeing my confused expression, then continued. The mansion is surrounded by thick forest, filled with traps, creatures and zombies. So we will secure a route for them to reach the mansion. You might be wondering why we don't use helicopters too, and that's a valid question. She smiled. We have another mission after that. General Adams guessed there is a traitor within STARS. Someone that works for the Umbrella. Once again, she surprised me. So they realized there was a traitor within their team. But it was obvious. Wesker had always been the traitor since he first appeared in the Resident Evil game. He even appeared in a few series after that, becoming the villain of every single story. The only person who didn't know about it was probably the STARS team. That means the helicopter that carries them can crash. Or it might not even arrive. Miss Rika continued. So we separated them into a few teams. Leon will go alone through the ground and enter the mansion from the back. Wesker will go with other members of the teams from the front. There are a total of 8 people, excluding us. That was a lot more than I thought. And the list of members were people I didn't know well, except for Leon and Wesker. I didn't know much about the other STARS members, and I couldn't imagine what kind of abilities they had. They were probably better than me though, and that made it harder for me to predict what might happen next. And we're going to Arklay Mountain in this van? Is our route different from Leon? I asked her. I mean, the forest and mansion are in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by forest and creatures. And zombies, too. Yes, she answered. We will go separately from Leon and the others. Our route is the safest among all, as we will deal with all the zombies and cover the main team in terms of emergency. But we still need to be careful. She sighed and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Her forehead furrowed, and her eyebrows knitted together. She looked stressed. Natural. We were dealing with zombies. It would be strange if she was happy about it. Not to mention, she had to take care of the safety of others and herself at the same time. The reason why she added me to her team was probably out of worry. Chapter 124, STARS. You know, I've always wondered why we're doing this job, she said with a soft voice, looking outside through the window. I never thought I would be a part of an organization like STARS. I mean, the world was fun before and now it's just fucked up. But I guess we have no choice but to deal with it. Yeah, you're right, I nodded. I'm still in high school, Miss Rika. And I never thought that this world would turn out like this. I'm still trying my best to adapt and survive, and I'm lucky to have some good people around me. We help each other, and we try to stay alive. You're a good boy, Gi. She smiled. I don't know how you become so good with guns. You have no experience and you never went to any training. And yet you shoot as well as any STARS member, Even better. I wonder if there is something more about you, but I don't want to dig in. I chuckled. She had her own secret and she didn't want anyone to dig in it either. So, she understood that everyone had their own secret they wanted to keep. Having a system certainly helped a lot. If not, I would die already. I would die from my first fight with a zombie, or from the horde of them. Even now I still have a hard time believing that I'm alive and well. And I was lucky that I got my hand on the system, although it was unreliable, which allowed me to survive until now. But I wouldn't rely on it forever. I had to train and get stronger myself. My current strength should be enough to allow me to fight Tyrant head-on. I already tried it on the zombies, my strength was enough to snap necks. But a Tyrant? Maybe I was strong enough, maybe I wasn't. I wouldn't know until I met one in the mission. I was thinking of testing my strength against one. Ding. You have received 500 shop points plus 2 strength. The last choice the system gave me was completed. I went this path and the system gave me some rewards. Now I have 40 strengths. Compared to a normal person, I might be 2 or 3 times stronger. We will reach our destination in 1 hour. Feel free to take a rest before we reach the drop point. We will climb the mountain after that. She continued her explanation. We have a place to rest, so you don't need to worry about camping and food. I just nodded and leaned my back to the seat. Miss Rika and I spent the next hour without talking to each other, enjoying the silence. She took out a calorie bar and began munching it. I took mine and began eating as well, enjoying the sweet and tasty chocolate-flavored snack. After the car reached its destination, we got off. We arrived in front of a small cabin located at the base of the Arklay mountain. A small wooden bridge connected us with the other side of the mountain, where our target location was. Looking up, the thick forest covered everything from view. The sky was dark gray and cloudy. Rain might fall later. Miss Rika grabbed my arm and led me into the cabin, closing the door behind her as soon as we entered. There was nothing inside but an old table with a chair. No bed, no bathroom, just a small living room with a fireplace. However, on top of that table was nothing ordinary. Weapons and equipment were neatly placed. They were mostly small firearms, from pistols to small caliber rifles. And on the table was a PSG-1. There was also a few magazines of 7.51 NATO ammo. This rifle was my weapon. And beside it stood a semi-automatic Dragunov sniper rifle, together with a small backpack full of supplies. This one was probably for Miss Rika, as she quickly took the gun and put it in the bag, loading the rifle with bullets. New baby, huh? Let's do this together. She talked to the weapon as she checked it. I couldn't understand her love toward her guns. I also prepared, grabbing the PSG-1 from the table. I slung it on my back, carrying the ammo in another bag. Let's go. Moving through the Arklay mountain wasn't an easy task. We were surrounded by forest, and there was no proper road. Just dirt trails that we had to follow. Narrow and dangerous. The thick trees around us made it impossible to see far away, making every step a risky one. There were many cliffs and steep hills, so if we fell from one of them, then it would be game over for sure. The mountain was full of wild animals, and I could hear the sound of wolves howling from afar. There was no time to rest. However, this made a perfect place for a sniper like us. I pulled my heavy backpack along with my PSG-1 rifle, following closely behind Miss Rika. We had a short rest at the cabin earlier, so we were still fresh. We also had enough water and food for 2 days, and I was certain we would arrive in no more than 3 hours at our destination. Because we were supposed to be undetected, we left every digital device at the camp, including our phone and watch. This was to prevent anyone from tracking us. We had a flare gun and a walkie-talkie connected with a battery, but that was the only communication device we brought. Fortunately, the walkie-talkie had range long enough to stay connected with the HQ. Let's take a short break here, Miss Rika said. It won't take long. I want to check our position again. We stopped at a clearing with some rock. Miss Rika crouched on the ground, taking a small notebook from her pocket and a compass. Like an experienced soldier, she used a small piece of cloth to wipe the compass clean before putting it away. She took a pen and began writing in the small notebook. Miss Rika? Call me leader during this mission. I'm the team leader. She replied. We're close. We will reach our destination soon. We need to go behind that cliff and we will see the mansion. She pointed at the tall cliff at the front. I followed her hand and looked at where she pointed. It was a sheer wall of rock, standing tall above everything else around it. Okay. I nodded and took a drink of water. Now we were talking about difficulty level. Wolves' howl and zombies' groaning were heard in the distance, and it was unnerving to hear them. Rustle from bushes was heard as well, as if something big was walking in them. I think we should be careful, leader, I told Miss Rika. I can hear something moving in that direction. Chapter 125, Controlled zombies. Miss Rika immediately stood up, holding her sniper rifle with one hand while the other reached for her pistol. Be ready for any situation, Miss Rika said with a serious expression, and she was looking around us, trying to spot whatever made that sound. After a moment of tense waiting, Miss Rika sighed. It's just a boar, she said with relief. A wild boar walked out of the bush with a snout on his face. He had two sharp tusks protruding out from both sides of his mouth and he was bigger than me. Are we going to hunt it? I asked. No, we don't have time to waste on hunting. We need to move, and fast. Understood. I took the sniper rifle I was carrying with me and put it over my shoulder, readying myself. Then we moved up the steep cliff, carefully avoiding falling rocks and loose dirt. We climbed the cliff, reaching a small path leading up the mountain. Unlike what I thought before starting, I wasn't too exhausted to move on. Thanks to the daily training and high level of stamina I had, it was easy for me to hike and climb. After an hour or so of walking through the dense forest and steep hills, we finally reached the top of the cliff. There were plenty of trees surrounding us and I couldn't see very far. I looked around and spotted a huge mansion in front of us. There it is. Miss Rika's voice rang in the air as we arrived at our destination. A raw scenery of Arklay mountains in the background, a big and imposing mansion with Victorian-era design. The garden was beautiful with neatly trimmed bushes, a fountain in the middle. There was no sign of life anywhere near it though. But there were zombies everywhere. Dozens of zombies roaming the ground in front of the mansion. I quickly counted the number of zombies on the ground from my binoculars and saw at least 30 or 40 zombies wandering aimlessly. Wow, there are so many of them, I muttered. Miss Rika smirked and replied with her usual calm tone. We won't do anything to them, as long as they are not a danger to Leon and the other team. She said, looking at the mansion. Our mission is to secure the way and give them fire support if needed. Understood. I nodded and readied my weapon, looking for a safe position. We will be hiding here, I suppose. What kind of enemies should I expect? Hearing me, she lowered her binoculars and looked at me seriously. A human, most probably. She answered with her serious expression. Umbrella is involved with all of this mess, and it's safe to say that their security guards will be patrolling the mansion. So keep your guard up. They won't be too much of a threat if you stay alert. Having humans as enemies meant we would kill. I had already killed a few in the previous mission. Now I would do the same thing again. It was inevitable. I couldn't let them roam freely to kill others. It would be my responsibility if that happened. So I steeled my mind, and prepared to kill. I see, leader. So the main force will reach here. Now. Just as I said that, I noticed a helicopter flying over our heads, heading straight to the mansion. So our role as sniper would be starting after the team entered the mansion, which would be any time now. Alright. I will take cover at the front gate while you take care of any possible threats from this position. Look around and learn from me. Miss Rika ordered me. I nodded and started to set up the sniper rifle I had brought. We were supposed to stay out of sight and only fire when we needed to, so we needed to be very stealthy. How to do that? The answer was pretty simple. Just lay on the ground with the rifle ready. Make sure you're not seen by anyone. Don't move unless absolutely necessary. That's how a sniper works, I think. Well, maybe there are other ways to do it, but this one was good enough for now. When we got into position, Miss Rika's presence felt pretty thin. She didn't move even an inch and positioned her eye behind the scope, following the helicopter's movement. I also looked through the scope and saw them. Wesker led the team down with a rope while the helicopter hovered over the mansion. There were 5 members, all men and himself. 5 stars members and mutant Wesker. I didn't recognize any of them, mainly because of the distance and I wasn't that familiar with them to begin with. However, their equipment was very good and their clothes seemed pretty sturdy. They carried some sort of assault rifles and pistols on their hips. They are fully geared up for combat. I don't think we need to worry much about their safety, Miss Rika commented. True, I replied, watching the team through the scope. They're professionals, right? I bet they can deal with zombies and hunters. Yes. You don't need to worry too much about the safety of the main force. They're tough and can take care of themselves, Miss Rika agreed. But they wouldn't know that Wesker was a traitor, and the enemies weren't limited to just zombies. If they weren't careful, they would get ambushed and die. I will take care of this side, she pointed to her left, where there were some trees. And you cover your back. It seems like the most likely point of entry for enemies, especially if they want to flank us from behind. Leon will enter through that side too, so we have to secure the route first. Got it, I said. Nothing happened for a while after that. It seemed that the team had already entered the mansion and began exploring, looking for any sign of suspicious activities or anything out of the ordinary. Suddenly, I heard something moving around me. I turned around and found a zombie standing behind me. It was close. Very close. Without hesitation, I slashed its neck, decapitating the head. Then another came. I slashed its torso apart and it collapsed into pieces. Its head was still intact and I stomped on it to make sure it was dead for good. But more and more zombies started coming out of nowhere. There were at least 10 or so of them surrounding us, and I didn't know how they appeared. "Can you handle them?" Miss Rika asked calmly. She wasn't looking at me. "I can," I answered shortly. There was no need for me to answer longer than this. Raising my sword, I dealt with them swiftly. I rushed forward to the group and cut them apart. Some tried to bite me but I managed to avoid them all. After killing a few, I noticed something weird about these zombies. They were trying to kill me. They were trying to surround me. Unlike normal zombies that attacked anything moving in front of them, these ones tried to trap me in the middle. I didn't know how many were still around, so it was hard for me to tell if there were any others besides these few. However, one thing I knew for sure. They are controlled. Someone hiding in some place controlled them. And I didn't think it was Wesker. If Wesker could control them, he would be using them to his advantage, sending them against the team that entered the mansion. Which means it must be someone else. Or maybe something else. The virus or a mutant. Chapter 126, Leon vs. Tyrant. After finishing all the zombies surrounding us, I approached Miss Rika and told her about my theory. She looked thoughtful after hearing it, then nodded. "Then it is more than likely a mutant," she replied with a serious tone. "We can't ignore what you said either. There are still a lot of things we don't know about this outbreak and its cause." "I think so, too." I stood beside Miss Rika, who kept her eyes on the mansion. Nothing had happened since the last incident. I couldn't sense anything either, which was good because I didn't want to get attacked again. I hoped we would just have to wait for the others to complete the mission without doing anything. But then again, that wouldn't happen. We stayed like that for several minutes. I noticed movement in the mansion. Some zombies approached due to the loud sound made by gunshot, but nothing dangerous. We didn't do anything as it wasn't our job. Then, we heard something. Something big. "Look, there," Miss Rika said, pointing to her left. There was a hole on the side of the mansion wall. It was Leon, moving pretty slowly with his shotgun on his shoulder. He seemed to have injured his leg. Blood was flowing from his thigh. But it didn't look too bad, and he was able to walk. He was trying to climb the wall. "Leader?" I asked for permission. Seeing him injured made me feel worried. What could injure someone like Leon? Just like Chris, he was a freaking beast. A skilled police officer who went through rigorous training. Even if a horde of zombies chased after him, he would be able to deal with them easily. And yet, here he was limping. "No, we stay here," she answered firmly. "If there is a danger, you will be able to kill it before it reaches him. So keep your position." What she said was right, and I had no other choice. If I left and those zombies appeared when Miss Rika concentrated, she could get injured. And I didn't want to leave her alone. She was a precious ally and friend. But if Leon was in trouble, well, shit. This is bad. "All right." I nodded. Leon climbed over the fence. He was panting heavily. He was injured, but it didn't look life-threatening. But then I heard a loud boom coming from the mansion, followed by the wall breaking. And out of it. Shit. A large humanoid with an exposed heart came out. Its muscle was fully visible and its skin looked like it had been removed. The mutated creature, prototype Tyrant, ran toward Leon at inhuman speed. It was fast. Too fast. I quickly aimed at its head and pulled the trigger. The bullet flew out from my gun and hit its shoulder instead of head due to its sudden movement. It made it stop though, which gave Leon time to dodge. Rolling down the stairs, he quickly stood up, looking at the monster that almost killed him. His eyes were wide open and he was sweating profusely. "What the?" Leon raised his gun and shot the monster in its chest. It didn't work. The Tyrant didn't seem fazed by the shot, and it moved fast to attack him again. Leon avoided it again and shot the creature in its face, but the Tyrant didn't die. It moved faster and hit him with its arm. Leon was blown away, his shotgun dropped to the ground and he rolled on the grass. His clothes were torn by the impact and his body hurt. And yet, he was still alive. The creature approached him and tried to grab him. But it wasn't going to get that easy. I was aiming at it with my sniper rifle, ready to shoot. Without hesitation, I pulled the trigger. My aim was good. I managed to hit its right leg, causing it to fall on its knees. Leon immediately took his chance to get away from the monster, running toward his shotgun on the ground. The monster quickly got back to its feet, and tried to reach Leon, but Miss Rika managed to hit it in the back of the knee. What an accurate shot. I took the chance to shoot again, this time I aimed at the exposed heart. My aim wasn't perfect but the bullet still hit the Tyrant in its upper arm. It was close enough that it should have damaged the muscle there. Miss Rika fired her rifle again, this time at the same spot where my bullet had hit. It was enough to knock the monster back down on the ground. Not missing this chance, Leon dashed with his shotgun. He put his foot on the tyrant's shoulder and shot its heart with his shotgun at point-blank range. He shot once, then again, until the tyrant's chest was nothing more than a hole. It was a good combination play between us. But the fight wasn't over yet. Leon looked at me and raised his thumb. But I quickly shot the tyrant again with my rifle, right on the head, causing its head to explode into a bloody mess. He was surprised by the sudden shot but quickly nodded to himself. I could see his shocked expression as he saw the tyrant die in front of him. But then he realized that he would be the one who got crushed if I didn't kill tyrant. He looked at our direction, gave us a little nod, before continuing to the mansion. Good shot, Miss Rika complimented me. If not because of you, Leon might be in danger. You're a great sniper. Thanks. I smiled. She then patted me on my shoulder, smiling as well. She looked really satisfied with what we did. All right. Now that Leon is safe, we need to move. She raised his body and began to pack up. The fundamental of being a sniper is that you shouldn't be caught. We need to move and find another spot to observe. Besides, that noise would attract any zombies to our direction soon. I agreed with her, so I nodded. Following her lead, I took out my sniper rifle and followed after her. She was leading the way as she led us to the new spot, and we soon found a place where we could see the entire mansion. It was just another part of the cliff with the same thick trees and bushes covering our position. It was good enough for now. Miss Rika sat on the ground again and began to prepare her gun, and so did I. We didn't talk much after that. We were busy watching out for any signs of trouble. If anything happened, we needed to be prepared to deal with it quickly and accurately. And nothing happened. Strange. I muttered to myself. Nothing happened. Nothing was attacking the mansion. No enemy was coming out. No one was moving, even the zombies outside of the mansion stopped walking and just stood there. It was unnatural. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. It felt like I was in a horror movie or something, waiting for something to jump out at us. My senses were heightened, and I could hear every sound around me. Miss Rika's breathing became faster, her hands were shaking slightly, and she looked nervous. Her eyes were focused on the mansion, but she glanced back at me occasionally. I looked at her with confusion and concern, wondering what she's thinking. What do you think? I asked her quietly. It's too silent. She replied in a low voice. I agree. We stayed silent for a moment, both of us were watching our surroundings carefully. And suddenly, we saw movement from the corner of our eyes. Zombies. Dozens, no, more like 50 zombies began to move, running toward the mansion. It was an ambush. Chapter 127, another monster with a... Not even Miss Rika expected this kind of attack. This was a full-scale assault. It was planned. Someone was planning this. Someone was leading them, commanding the zombies. A mutant or human. Or maybe something worse. A zombie apocalypse is bad enough, but this one was orchestrated by someone. The fact those zombies moved systematically was enough proof. Shit. Get ready to fire at my command. I could tell that Miss Rika was panicking a little, and that made me worried as well. But she quickly composed herself and took her position. Ready when you are, leader. I replied to her and took my own spot as well. What are the orders? We're gonna give them a little present before they reach the mansion, she answered. Just focus on the few special ones. There should be some zombies that control the others, just like what happened to us. I understand. She took aim, and so did I. Through the scope, I tried to identify the zombies that might cause a problem, but can't find any. All of them were normal zombies that you could find anywhere in the street. Of course their numbers had dwindled, but there were still more zombies than humans in this world right now. Still, I managed to see some special zombies among them. They ran faster and attacked with their hands. They didn't look like your typical slow-walking zombie. These guys were strong. We'll start firing once they reach that tree over there, she said. You see our target? I got it, leader. We watched the zombie horde as it got closer and closer, and we waited for them to pass that particular spot. Ready? Yes, I replied. And we fired our first shots. A few seconds later, I fired my second round. Our shots hit two of the zombies in front of the group, one of the special zombies. It stumbled down and the other zombies tripped on it, slowing the advance. But they quickly recovered and kept running forward. They were fast. And after our first shot, they began to notice us and change direction. Some of them moved toward the cliff, running like a madman as they climbed the slope. They noticed us. Miss Rika yelled and started shooting again. Cover me. I will keep firing. I aimed at another special zombie, then another, and fired. My shot missed the head and instead went into the chest, blowing up a hole on the body. My aim was good, but not enough to deal with such a fast-moving target at this distance. We were more than 400 meters away from the mansion. Miss Rika's second shot managed to kill another special zombie. She quickly changed the magazine and started to shoot again. Shot after shot was fired, and she kept killing more zombies with every single one of them. But she was slowly being outnumbered, and her speed wasn't fast enough to keep the number of the horde in check. Soon they would reach us, and then we would be surrounded. And the zombies would tear us apart. I aimed and shot again. Another head exploded. But there were so many, too many of them. We're moving. Knowing we would only dig our grave if we stayed here, Miss Rika ordered us to leave. I quickly packed everything, grabbed my sword, and ran down the cliff. We passed the trees and jumped down to the ground, running as fast as we could to avoid getting caught by the zombies. While running, I asked Miss Rika, "Are we moving to a new spot?" "Yes, we have to. But don't forget about our main mission," she answered while panting hard. Sweat dripped from her forehead. "We will climb up a tree to avoid these zombies. That will put us in a tough spot, but we have no choice." Indeed, climbing up the tree allowed us to dodge those zombies. They couldn't climb or think, and even though we were visible to them, they didn't come closer than that. We climbed a tree with a lot of leaves that would cover our presence. Phew, that was close. At least we are safe for now, I said to myself, and looked at the mansion. Although it seems like they're not exiting the mansion soon. The zombies have spread around the garden. "Yeah, I can see them," Miss Rika replied, panting. "But I can't see Leon. Maybe he had entered through that hole. I can only pray that he is okay. We can't do anything for him." She paused, her eyes locked onto something far away. "Something inside the mansion, probably. We can only pray that he is fine," she muttered again. Then her expression turned serious. "Anyway, the mansion has a lot of secrets. We guessed there was a hidden laboratory in it. It should be a big laboratory, but no one knew the entrance. Once again, we have to be alert and make sure no one enters the mansion," she continued. "Some zombies walked past us, seemingly trying to find a way to get to us, and we could hear them growling and hissing. It was nerve-wracking." Miss Rika suddenly tensed up and looked at something far away. I followed her gaze, and I saw the source of her reaction. "Is that?" It was a monster. A humanoid monster, similar to the tyrant. But it wasn't a tyrant. With a large body, pale white skin, and bulging muscles that were exposed, it was obvious that it was a different creature. A monster. It was bigger and taller than any normal human. It looked like a cross between a gorilla and a human. On its hand, a large club with spikes on it. It was dragging it like a caveman would do to its weapon. The club was made of bones, and it was bigger than the size of an average adult. With its gigantic size and powerful muscles, it was no wonder it was strong enough to carry it. Miss Rika was staring at it with disbelief, unable to believe her own eyes. She had never seen such a creature before. However, I was different. I recognized this monster. I knew exactly what it was. A mutated in Resident Evil, a monster called the El Gigante. "Miss Rika," I whispered quietly to her, "that one is bad news." While Tyrant was a monster made by the T-virus, an experimental virus made by the Umbrella Corporation, El Gigante was made by Plaga's parasite. Two monsters created by two different viruses. The fact that they were together meant it wasn't just Umbrella involved with this whole thing. Another corporation, a company that could make monsters as well, was behind all of this. Most possibly a cult from France that worshipped the mother virus and the ancestor of Ashley, Sadler. It's an organization called Los Illuminados. Fuck, I cursed. We had another enemy. The worst-case scenario I could imagine had just become a reality. "What is that thing?" Miss Rika asked me. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Her eyes never left the giant creature. El Gigante. There was no need to hide it from her. She knew I entered the game, she would find out about this sooner or later. "Is that the name you call that thing?" I nodded and took my rifle. "Yes, I know this thing. I know its strength, and we need to stay away from it," I replied. "Just what we need. Another monster." Chapter 128, El Gigante. I narrowed my eyes and watched it. I knew it was dangerous, but it was far away and I didn't want to provoke it, at least for now. It walked and stopped at some place, raising its head and sniffing the air, as if searching for something. Then its eyes landed on the mansion. Its eyes never left the building. And then, it charged. "Miss Rika." I called out to her. She nodded and aimed her rifle, shooting it with her weapon. I also shot it, but our bullets didn't even faze the giant. They bounced off the hard skin like a pebble would. The El Gigante didn't flinch and continued its path, charging straight at the mansion with a loud roar. It ran and crashed into the wall. The wall of the mansion was destroyed. Wood pieces, stones, and other materials flew everywhere as the monster rammed through it, making a new opening on the wall. I could hear the screams of the zombies and other creatures inside as they were crushed under its feet. However, I didn't see the members of Stars through the scope. The mansion's interior looked empty and deserted. Nothing but corpses were on the ground, and no sign of humans or survivors anywhere. This is bad, Miss Rika said as she reloaded her sniper rifle. I was about to reply to her when I heard a loud noise. My head snapped towards it and I saw a giant figure moving around the mansion. It roared and roamed around the area, smashing through the windows and destroying the garden. Miss Rika cursed. We must do something about that or the team won't be able to return. Should we engage? I asked. I had no idea what to do against that thing. If I remembered correctly, it had thick skin and could take a lot of damage before dying. Not to mention the plugin on its back that could make it regenerate its wounds. Yes, the plaga. It was its weak point and we had to target it, but... I looked at Miss Rika. Her eyes were wide and her face was pale. She shook her head and whispered to me. Can you do it? I don't want you to throw yourself in a clear danger like that, but if we do nothing, that thing will destroy the mansion. The mission will be a failure and everyone will die. I don't know what we can do to help them but I believe that we have a better chance of survival if we fight. I can do it, I replied confidently. People who speedrun the game often did a knife-only challenge. And they could fight LG Gandhi with no problem, showing that we could kill this monster even with just a knife. I had a sword, and it was better than any knife. And I also had a sniper rifle and revolver strong enough to pierce its skin, hopefully. Okay. I will distract him from here. You take the opportunity and sneak close to him. If he tries to attack us then we will run. But don't go too far. I need you to be near to protect me. We have a mission, but our safety is the top priority. Miss Rika instructed. I got it. I put down the sniper rifle and took out the revolver. I checked if it was loaded with bullets and I had the holster with extra rounds on my hips, so everything should be ready. With that, I jumped down the tree and started sprinting to where the El Gigante was. The zombies noticed my movement and began chasing me but I was faster than them. My body felt so light even with all the weapons. I was like a superhuman athlete. My stamina, speed, and strength all increased by a lot. So I dodged them with ease, and even El Gigante didn't see me as it was busy rampaging through the garden, killing zombies with its bone club. The El Gigante didn't seem to care about the zombies at all, it was more focused on breaking stuff and roaring. Everything and everyone was its enemy. It only made things easier for me to sneak close. Once I was close enough to see the monster, Miss Rika began firing from the distance. She aimed and shot its head, causing the creature to stagger a little and growling angrily. It allowed me to sneak from behind it without it noticing me. Then, she fired again. This time it was on its left arm. The El Gigante turned to the direction where she fired from. I used the chance and moved behind the creature. I raised my revolver and aimed at its head, the second weakness beside the plaga inside its body. Bang! I pulled the trigger and the bullet pierced the monster's thick skull. Blood spurted out and stained my shirt. The creature screamed loudly as it was shot in its head, but the bullet stopped before it managed to pierce through the bone. El Gigante was still alive and well. Turning around, it locked eyes with me. Drool was dripping down its mouth, and I could smell its breath from this distance. It was filled with bloodlust and hunger, a primal desire for destruction. With a roar, the monster charged at me. It swung the club wildly at me but I managed to dodge the attack easily. Its attack was slow and predictable. The monster was big, strong, and durable but not smart or agile. I grinned and circled around it. The monster kept attacking me, trying to crush me with its giant club. However, my agility was far better than this lumbering giant. I easily evaded its attacks and fired my revolver at the same time. My shots weren't hitting the weak spots, but they managed to injure the creature. Bang! The bullet flew toward its stomach, and I could see the blood coming out of it. The wound wasn't deep and I didn't know how much damage it did to the creature. It seemed like a shallow injury. The creature was furious now. Its eyes were filled with hatred and rage. With an angry cry, it began swinging its club even harder. Each swing caused shockwaves and I was almost thrown backward by the sheer force. I had to duck and roll around to dodge its swings and keep myself alive. It was tiring me out. I looked at my surroundings and found a good place to jump. A pile of stones and rocks on the ground. The El Gigante continued its assault but it was only hitting thin air. I rolled around, trying to avoid getting crushed by its massive club, and managed to get closer to where I wanted. I reached the spot I targeted. And with a swift motion, I stepped onto it and launched myself into the air. El Gigante reached out its hand to grab me. Its hand was big and its palm alone was enough to grab a full-grown man's body. But I managed to dodge it and land on the creature's arm. I quickly unsheathed my sword with a quick pull of the scabbard, and swung it downward at its wrist. The blade met the resistance of muscle and bone, stopping midway. I put my full weight onto the grip of my sword, and pulled it upward with one swift movement. Slash. A large cut formed in its wrist and I saw the bones beneath its thick skin. Blood poured down like a fountain from its severed artery, and the giant let out a pained roar. Still, it wasn't enough to force him down. The plaga behind its back hadn't shown itself yet. I was only scratching his skin, cutting muscles, but I needed to force it out. Miss Rika's support fire arrived right in time. She managed to hit his eyes with a perfectly placed bullet. It let out another roar, louder this time, and it swayed back and forth. It tried to grab me but its arm was badly wounded so it fell. At that moment, the parasite sprouted out from the tiny bulge on its neck. Pus and blood squirted as it emerged, showing its ugly worm-like form to us. Gee. Do it now. Miss Rika shouted through the communication device. Chapter 129, finishing. Miss Rika fired at its arm again and blew up a hole in the limb. Without missing the opportunity, I climbed on the back of the creature using the wound I had just opened on it. I quickly found my footing, and with a powerful thrust of my arms, I swung the sword downward and pierced the parasite. It wriggled in pain but I kept on slicing it. Again, and again. The parasite squirmed in pain as I cut through it mercilessly. With a mighty heave, I plunged the entire sword down the middle of its body. It struggled fiercely but I didn't relent, driving it deeper until the tip of my blade was touching its bone. Still. It's not dead yet, and LG Gandhi began to recover. It suddenly moved forward with an abrupt motion and almost lost my grip. Its arm rose and it swatted its back violently. Shit. I was thrown to the ground. I rolled and crashed into a stone pile, hurting myself a bit, but quickly stood up. Resting here would mean certain death. This giant could easily kill me even with my current stat. I would only last a few seconds at best. So I had to move. LG Gandhi's movement was faster than before. It raged around, smashing everything around it as it searched for me. I ran away from it and jumped from one tree branch to another to avoid the monster. It couldn't see where I was going so it was swinging blindly. But I was still careful and made sure I wouldn't be caught by the monster's attack. Pulling out my revolver once again, I shot its legs. It staggered but it was still moving. Rather than stopping to recover, it roared and rushed at me, smashing through the tree. It was too reckless. It didn't care about anything as long as it got me. Just like a giant beast, its footsteps were enough to shake the ground beneath my feet. It was way stronger than the LG Gandhi I remembered from the game. Of course, this was reality. But I had to do it. I jumped to the side at the perfect moment and barely managed to evade the creature's club, but it still grazed me. Blood flowed from the wound. "Fuck you," I said, gritting my teeth. It wasn't that bad of a wound, it barely even hurt compared to falling from the stairs. But a wound was a wound. I rushed toward LG Gandhi and unloaded all my remaining ammo right onto his legs. All 3 shots hit its thigh and the giant fell to its knees. I didn't even stop to think as I continued running, and when I was in range, I leaped at him. Using my strength and agility, I landed on his shoulder and then swung my sword right at the back of its head, where its brainstem would be located. Swoosh. The blade cleanly cut the flesh of LG Gandhi but failed to behead him. The muscle was too hard and I couldn't get enough momentum. Instead, blood spilled from the wound as the blade pierced the creature's neck and stuck there. I couldn't pull the sword from its neck without snapping it in half. Shit. Due to a moment of carelessness, I failed to retrieve the weapon, and at that instant, the LG Gandhi screamed and stood up, flinging me to the ground. Ugh. I groaned in pain when I landed on my back. I quickly got to my feet and rolled to the side to avoid the creature's stomps. Even without my weapon, I must fight the creature until Miss Rika shot the plaga. Thankfully, there was one thing that I could use to fight El Giganto. Come, you bastard. My own fist. Grah. LG Gandhi charged toward me, roaring and drooling blood. It stomped its feet and brought down its club with such force that the earth trembled. It was like a landslide that would destroy anything standing before it, a true monster capable of breaking human with his arm. And here I am, facing it alone without any weapon. I could always buy another sword from the system store, but I wanted to be stupid now. I wanted to test my new strength and endurance. I needed to understand what kind of human I had become. As long as I had my wits with me, it would be easy. When he got close, I dodged its massive blow with a sidestep, then quickly rolled out of the way from the club. With a loud crash, the club broke the ground and left behind a hole that I almost fell into. However, this was my chance. I quickly dashed and punched its head with a fist full of fury. Bam! Its head twisted backward as my punch connected with it and the monster stumbled. It wasn't the end. My body felt hot, and my blood boiled with the heat of battle. I roared as I lunged forward, my fist connecting with its chest. I was amazed at my newfound strength that my body possessed. Each of my punches sent a ripple across the air and shockwaves through the air as if there was an explosion every time. My attack caused El Gigante to lose its footing. And as it staggered back, it exposed the weak point on the back. Leader. Miss Rika didn't miss the opportunity. A shot rang out from the distance and a hole appeared on its parasite. With another shot, it fell lifelessly, followed by the giant body that caused the earth to shake as it fell down the ground. A victory. I approached the fallen El Gigante and took out my sword, which was now half stuck inside the thick neck. Pulling it out with both hands, it finally became free. Phew. I sighed as I cleaned my sword with its skin and sheathed it back. I turned and saw the face of the defeated El Gigante. To think I fought this creature with bare hands. I was really crazy when my adrenaline rose high. And I survived. A testament of how much I had grown in strength and speed, a true proof of my new ability. But the next sound I heard made me lose my cool demeanor as if I had just been thrown into cold water. Make your choice, Chapter 130, Wiped Out? Rika lit up her cigarette after finishing El Gigante. Phew, she exhaled. The mission was harder than she thought. A giant monster with clubs suddenly appeared from the forest. It wasn't something that was written in the mission briefing at all. But then again, this mission was a special one and she didn't know what was actually happening inside. No one could guess that the mission to secure a safe zone would be this dangerous. No wonder the leader of Stars and his team joined this mission. They must have known something, Rika thought to herself. And Dki. Crazy kid. The young man fought the giant monster without fear. It was as if he was enjoying the fight and Rika could feel his passion and will to win even from afar. He used a sword to engage in a melee combat against the El Gigante. It was crazy and Rika thought she was going to witness Dki's end, but he managed to survive. He even punched the giant with his fist and his punches sent shockwaves through the air. Rika could see the sheer strength behind each of Dki's attacks. His agility and reflex were also great, allowing him to dodge El Gigante's attack at close range. Watching him fight reminded her of the trained member of Stars that went into the mansion. The sheer strength he possessed made her believe that he could fight against a group of zombies and win. What happened to that boy? He's just an ordinary boy before the apocalypse started. And he still had the innocence in him when he was in the camp. Just like the time when he got slightly flustered when they went skinny dipping. Or when he got slightly aroused by seeing Rika naked in the house. Or the way he was still innocent when Rika teased him. Was it all an act? Or was it his real personality? Rika didn't know the truth and she couldn't read his mind. But what she was certain of is the fact that Dki wasn't an average guy. Phew. She let out a puff of smoke. Rika couldn't get a grasp of Dki's character at all. He was an ordinary guy, or so she thought, but then he fought with a smile akin to that of a psycho. Maybe she could ask the kid himself later on, Rika thought to herself as she saw him approaching. He was carrying his sword on his hip, and his clothes were covered in dirt and sweat. There was a cut on his right cheek, and blood dripped from his wound. His face was slightly red and he seemed tired. "You're back." "Yes," he answered while heaving a sigh. "That was brutal. I didn't think I would have to fight that giant alone. Not even I would guess we have to face a mutated human." Rika sighed. Dki then raised his eyebrows and said, "Mutated? Well, you're not wrong. But that thing isn't just some virus." "It isn't? What is it then?" Rika looked at Dki. "A parasite," he said, leaning against a tree. He didn't want to climb back up just to watch the mansion since they had finished their task. "But not some common parasite." "Explain," she said, looking at him with a stern face. "It's called a plaga parasite. An ancient parasite that was sealed deep in a village. They were worshipped and it gave some sort of superpower to people." Rika raised her eyebrows at Dki's explanation, and she replied, "Superpower? You mean that thing gives the ability to make humans mutate? It doesn't make sense. It's not logical." "Yeah, it's not. But the fact is that it's real." "Where did you get that information?" Rika questioned. She didn't want to hear something based on a hunch, especially from someone like Dki who had no knowledge of science. A normal high school boy who didn't know the slightest bit of secret laboratory until the apocalypse. There was no way he could know that a certain thing could do what he claimed, even though he was the only one who had experience fighting the giant. "The laboratory I found the parasite. It was the one I gave to Wesker before." "Oh yeah. It was the same parasite as the one you found in that secret laboratory?" "Yeah. Exactly." Dki nodded and raised his head. "It was a dominant species plaga, a parasite that can control the subordinate parasite inside the body. Like the zombie virus. If you implant it to an infected, you'll be able to make it a mutant, just like that thing I just fought. Though the one we fought before was a special one." "Yeah, sure." Rika rolled her eyes as Dki stated something obvious. Anyone who saw that giant and thought it was just mutated due to a parasite would need to have their brain checked. That was clearly not normal. "So, The enemy in the mansion might not be Umbrella Corporation alone but another company. Or a cult. He didn't look fazed at all. Rika didn't understand how a kid like him could stay so calm. You know what a cult is? He shook his head, showing he didn't know. Well, it's not important for now. She shrugged and continued smoking. The mission isn't over yet until the STARS members return. Humming, Dki then said, so, we have no choice but to stay and wait. What about communicating with them? I haven't heard anything since we left the car. It's natural. Your device is only connected to mine. There is another device I use to communicate with the team inside, but even this has gone silent since the giant appeared. Rika said, pointing at her ear. Wait, so the communication isn't active anymore? It seems like it. She shrugged. I've tried to contact them after you killed that monster, but they aren't picking up. They are either busy with something, or maybe. She didn't want to continue, but she did. The whole team was wiped out. Chapter 131, Retreat or Advance. I looked at Miss Rika with wide eyes as I heard what she said. They might be wiped out by that giant? Is it because of that giant? Miss Rika took another puff of her cigarette and replied to me. No, I don't think so. They must have gone into the area where communication is impossible. I looked at her questioningly and asked her. Why are you so sure? The laboratory. She said as if that's all the answer I needed, but when I didn't show any sign of understanding her, she continued. Because it's located underground, there is a chance that the signal won't reach them there. I had guessed that, but I was hoping it was just my delusion. Still, even with that answer, I couldn't shake the bad feeling that had been building up in me since the moment I saw the choices. I felt uneasy and my heart was racing. It was probably just a gut feeling, but it felt real enough. That's why I chose the second option rather than the third. Ding. You have received 500 shop points plus 1 stamina, enough point to get myself another stamina pill, though I would like to get something that could heal my cut first. But more importantly, are we retreating now? I asked Miss Rika, who was leaning against the trunk of the tree. Or should we wait a bit longer before returning? She thought for a moment, looking at the mansion in the distance, before she spoke. No. We'll stay here for a little while longer, she replied. If the STARS team really is inside that place, then they won't come out until their job is done. But if they don't come out in 30 minutes, then we will go home. I nodded and sat down next to her, leaning my back against the tree trunk. Miss Rika then asked me. What about your wound? It's nothing, I answered. It'll heal soon enough. Miss Rika raised an eyebrow, seemingly not believing my words. She then said, Really? Let me check it then. Jumping down from the tree after lowering her gun to me, she began to check on my face. I didn't resist and just let her examine me. When she finished inspecting my wound, she pulled away and sat beside me, lighting another cigarette. After she exhaled, she spoke again. You know, you're really lucky. That giant could have easily crushed you into pieces. And that's without taking into account the fact you're not a superhuman with a mutated virus inside you. None of us are, and if we get injured like that, we die. Miss Rika took another puff of her cigarette, looking up at the sky. If you're a soldier or a trained officer, you'd know better than to charge in like a dumb idiot. But you're not trained for combat. You don't have the experience of fighting in wars or dealing with terrorists or any kind of dangerous situation. I looked at her with a soft gaze. Even when she looked so strict and bossy, she was actually a caring person deep inside. The fact that she scolded me like that was enough proof. And she had the guts to say what others thought, but no one dared to speak aloud. What? She noticed my gaze and turned to face me, looking slightly annoyed. What are you staring at? I smirked at her and replied with a smile. Miss Rika, has anyone told you that you're really beautiful before? What? She looked shocked at my sudden compliment. Have you gone crazy? Oh no, the giant hit your head so hard, you went dumb. Laughing, I replied, I'm just stating the fact. You're pretty, you know. She stared at me for a moment, and then sighed, turning her gaze back to the sky, seemingly ignoring my comment. We sat there silently, watching the mansion with LG Gandhi corpse sleeping in front of it. It was a strange scene. A few months ago, when the apocalypse hadn't struck yet, I would have laughed at someone who told me I would be sitting on top of a cliff, holding a sniper rifle to guard an abandoned mansion from a monster. It sounded too absurd for me. But here I was now. A survivor who survived countless zombies, a tyrant, a mutant, and now, an LG Gandhi. It made me feel like a hero from some video games or a main character from a movie or an anime. The feeling was good. I liked being a hero and saving lives. Of course, I had no hero complex or anything. But being praised when doing something made me feel really good. Not to mention I was now strong enough to fight LG Gandhi. I only had to push myself a little bit further and I could even defeat Nemesis without any trouble. As for the reason I was thinking about this, it was simple. My system. Yeah, I had to admit that without my system I was no one. But that was what made it so interesting. I could grow to the strongest human just by making the right choices. It was easy. I could do it, and I wanted to try. I was bored sitting on this tree and waiting for something to happen. So, after thinking for a while, I asked Miss Rika. Hey, Miss Rika. It's been 10 minutes since I returned but no one came out from that hole. What do you think we should do? 10 minutes was too long for a mission like this. A communications blackout for more than 10 minutes was a sign that something bad happened. Either the entire team was dead, or worse, the enemy was inside that mansion and was trying to kill them. I didn't care what happened to the other STARS members since I barely knew them. The only ones I knew were Jill, Brad, Leon, and Wesker, though the last one was a traitor. The problem was, Leon was among the team. And that meant that if something bad happened, he could be in danger too. Miss Rika looked at the mansion for a moment, and then she sighed and looked at me. I don't know. It's hard for me to make a decision. We can't go in because we don't have any idea where the team went or what happened to them, so I'm afraid we might just end up being trapped inside that mansion. I don't want that to happen. I understood what she meant. I also didn't want to get caught inside a mansion with no communication and possibly enemies. But the situation was different. Chapter 132, Fake Communication. I agree with your assessment, but there are things that you should know. I paused and waited for her response. First, it's strange that this mansion is unguarded. Second, there is no way El Gigante can hide itself until the team is inside. Hearing me, Miss Rika narrowed her eyes and nodded her head. She knew exactly what I meant. There is a traitor who leaked information, Miss Rika said. If not, it will be strange that everything went like this. Exactly. That El Gigante must be sent to attack the mansion while the team is inside. I looked at her and continued. We should find out who it is. The mole is in the team that entered that mansion. Most probably. I will investigate once we return. She replied. We fell silent after that. The situation was clear now. We had a mole among us. Someone who was trying to sabotage the mission. Yeah, good freaking question. I wonder who that could be. I looked at Miss Rika and it seemed like she had arrived at the same conclusion. We were in the same page now, and we knew what to do. Miss Rika looked at the mansion for a moment and then said. I will ask permission to retreat in 30 minutes. In the meantime, we will watch and try to communicate with them. Nodding, I grabbed the PSG-1 and took on a prone position once again. All the zombies in our area had moved away so we didn't need to stay on top of the trees. Miss Rika stood beside me, holding the communicator device and speaking to it. This is Rika. Can you hear me? There was a static sound for a moment, but no response. Are you alright in there? Can anyone answer? Again, nothing. It was like that for the first few minutes. She attempted to communicate with them every 5 minutes but there was no response from them. I was watching the mansion and the surroundings with my rifle but there was nothing moving. Then suddenly, the device made a noise and a static voice was heard from the other end. This is Bravo 1. We are alright. The static voice of a man was heard. Bravo 1, this is Eagle 0. How's the situation inside? Miss Rika quickly asked, her expression changing. Static and garbled noises followed for the next minute. Nothing came from the device. Miss Rika called the man a few more times before the garbled noise finally died out. The line went dead. And that's the cue for our retreat. Miss Rika put the device down and turned around to me. We lost the communication again. She gritted her teeth and looked at the mansion. I sighed. Is it time for us to retreat? I asked. She looked at me and nodded her head. Yes. I will contact the HQ now. We need to go. And that was it. We packed up our stuff, climbing down from the cliff. Leon would have to survive by himself and his teammate. I would pray that he got the best choice that would keep him alive. I just hope that the other members of STARS are also alive and well. As for us, it was time to retreat. Back to the base, back to our normal life, and back to our survival. I would rest, get some sleep and prepare for the next choice. When we reached the cabin, Miss Rika took off the communication device connected to the team inside and suddenly raised her voice. Fuck. Don't get close to me, zombies. While doing that, she threw the device to the ground and stomped on it hard, creating a crunching sound and cracking noise. I watched her as she kicked and stomped the thing. A smile crept up on her face as she ground the communicator into the dirt. When she finished, she looked up at me with a serious expression. Change your gear. We're going into that mansion. Hearing that, I nodded slightly. It seemed like my plan to return safely was out of option now. I wondered what changed her mind, But she answered before I could ask, as if she could read my mind. The communication device was still connected to the one inside. She explained while putting down her sniper and taking a Desert Eagle as well as a Benelli shotgun. And the voice earlier didn't belong to any of the team members. Unlike me, Miss Rika was familiar with the members of the team that went inside the mansion. I had never heard any of their voices save for Leon and Wesker, so I didn't notice something unusual earlier. Not only that, the voice was filled with static that it was hard to hear. I was amazed that Miss Rika could catch that. So it was the enemy trying to lure us in or make us retreat. I put down the PSG-1 and reloaded my revolver. Unfortunately, I didn't bring any rifle, so I had to make do with this. It would be great if I had a submachine gun like Heckler & Koch Magic .5 or Heckler & Koch UMP, or maybe an Arklay M4A1 carbine. Our mission was supposed to keep us at a safe distance. And I trusted Leon to be strong enough to handle everything. Never did I expect that not only the Umbrella and the rival company, but the cult also got involved in this. Now that would be really funny and troublesome. Anyway, back to my mission now. Miss Rika finished her preparation and looked like a female agent from movies. Her gear was composed of tight black pants, black shirt with holsters on top of it, and a helmet with visor that she held on her head. Her weapons were 2 Desert Eagles and a Benelli shotgun strapped to her back. Of course she had to look sexy. This was after all still high school of the dead world, and the law of the universe would never allow her to dress like a tomboy when there were so many sexy clothing out there. Her firm and supple breasts were emphasized by the tight shirt she was wearing, showing off her assets clearly. The leather jacket was worn unzipped, showing her curves as she moved around. And even her black pants had to emphasize her firm buttocks. If it wasn't because of the end of the world, I bet there would be some cosplay costumes or tight leather pants instead of these. She looked hot as fuck, and I didn't regret my choices that led to me meeting her at all. What? Are you horny in the middle of a dangerous mission? Miss Rika noticed my gaze and she put on her visor helmet, hiding half of her face. Keep it until we return. I shall reward you plenty. I gulped and nodded my head, grinning like a madman. Chapter 133, A Little Girl? Spencer Mansion was the place that Leon and the rest of the STARS members entered earlier. Having been placed in a separate team that had to enter alone, Leon couldn't help but curse under his breath. He was injured before even reaching the mansion, and now he had to explore this alone because he couldn't connect to anyone. I can't contact Rika or the advance team. Is there a problem with my communication? He thought to himself as he kept on walking around, his handgun held tight in his hands. The mansion was pretty large considering its location in Arklay Mountain. The corridor was connected to many rooms, which all seemed empty at first glance. Leon didn't want to explore any more after the first 2 empty rooms he visited. It was a waste of time and energy. Nothing useful could be gained by staying inside the mansion, and the team members had a limited time to find the hidden laboratory. Underground, right? Based on the information shared between the STARS members, there should be an underground lab hidden in this place. There was suspected to be BOW hidden there too, which was the reason for this investigation. Leon scoffed at that information. In the underground? Then what the hell was the creature that attacked him earlier? Was that not a BOW created by Umbrella Corporation? Did they lie? Whatever, Leon thought. He couldn't do anything but finish his job. No information is perfect. There will always be a flaw. He knew the basic floor plan of the building. He didn't know what kind of secret the place was hiding, but that didn't matter to him. All he had to do was follow orders from the leader of STARS. Leon looked at his watch and frowned. There were traces of people in the corridor and rooms, but he had not encountered anyone so far, nor could he contact the members of the team. They must be deep underground by now. This way, huh? Moving slowly with his handgun ready, Leon approached the end of the corridor and looked at the door at the end of it. The light in this area was very dim and the entire place gave off an eerie feeling. He didn't feel good being alone here. Let's go. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Stairs leading underground. The air smelled foul and Leon almost vomited. Ugh. Leon frowned and shook his head. This is disgusting. A long hallway was laid before him, leading into the unknown darkness of the place. There were many rooms along both sides of the corridor and they looked empty and dark, like they were waiting to swallow him. Damn. I have a bad feeling about this place. Taking another deep breath to calm his nerves, Leon stepped forward cautiously. The stench grew stronger as he moved closer and the sound of dripping water echoed through the silent halls. Many cables and wires were connected to the wall, and the lights on the ceiling were weak, flickering and barely lighting up the place. It made him feel uncomfortable, as though someone was watching from behind. However, Leon knew that it was only an illusion created by the fear and paranoia he felt. He had been trained well to not get carried away by emotions during a mission. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. No matter how many times he looked around him, there was nothing there but emptiness and darkness. He checked the room on his right and left, but there was nothing inside them except some broken machinery. No one was present in those rooms. What is this place? He thought to himself. The rooms had been used as living quarters, judging from the furniture. But now everything was covered with dust and cobwebs. Footprints were also found everywhere. They must have belonged to the advance team, but something was strange. It's not organized, Leon muttered. He could see the signs of struggle in each footprints. They weren't walking calmly, they were running and trying to survive. Shit. Leon frowned as he realized what that meant. Something is happening. Leon hurried his step and ran to the last door. There should be a laboratory behind that, and that was where everyone was supposed to be heading to. He hid behind the shadow of the door and peeked through the gap between the frame and the wall. There was a long table at the center of a spacious room with several doors on the far end. Glass tubes stood tall in rows along the wall opposite to where Leon stood, containing various kinds of creatures within. From humanoid creatures to dogs, alligators, and giant spiders. There were even some kind of lizards with spikes and sharp teeth. And in the center of it all, a monitor with a small girl in a red dress on it. Her face and figure was blurry and distorted, but it seemed she was talking to someone. Leon could hear her faint voice from where he stood. King. The voice was very small and Leon could not understand her words. However, it seemed like the person was having a conversation with someone. With a blonde-haired man with black coat covered in blood. Leon narrowed his eyes when he saw him. He was no stranger to Leon. The man's hair was disheveled, his face looked tired but his eyes showed a strong determination. His clothes were covered with dried blood stains and dirt, and he wore no gloves, revealing his bare hands which were covered with scars. What's going on? Wesker? For some reason, Wesker was talking to the girl in the monitor while being surrounded by bodies. Leon's eyes widened upon seeing the scene. He held his breath and looked closely, trying to confirm what his mind had registered. It was unbelievable to see so many corpses lying on the floor like trash. The sight was horrible and gruesome. All of them belonged to the advance team. Their limbs were torn apart, and their bodies were crushed beyond recognition. The smell of rotten flesh was thick and nauseating. The smell of decay hung heavy in the air, making him want to vomit again. Shit. Leon cursed in his mind as he stared at the scene before his eyes. His mind was confused and shocked. The whole thing seemed unreal to him. At that moment, the monitor flickered and the girl seemed to look straight at him. Their eyes met and he felt his heart beat faster. Is she looking at me? Leon thought as he stared at her. The girl's face was covered in shadows but she had long hair and bright eyes. She looked like a young girl, but there was something eerie about her appearance that sent chills down Leon's spine. Like a ghostly apparition, the girl's image became clearer until it resembled that of a real person. And then, it seems there is an intruder. Wesker turned his head to the side, looking straight at him with his red glowing eye. His face was devoid of emotions and he looked tired, as though he had been through a war or a battle. Ah! A soft sound escaped Wesker's mouth in realization. You survived, Leon. Feeling shiver down his spine, Leon immediately knew it was a bad idea to stay. He immediately bolted out of the door, leaving behind Wesker and the laboratory. Chapter 134, Entering the mansion. Reaching the mansion undetected was pretty simple because there was a hole created by El Gigante earlier. I pushed my back against the wall and looked at Miss Rika on the other side, focusing not to miss her hand sign. She raised her right hand and made some signals. I understood it and gave a signal back. Nodding, Miss Rika quickly took cover and signaled me again. We entered through the hole and immediately heard some noises. Miss Rika put up her finger on her lips and gave me a warning look. She signaled to be quiet and follow her. She moved stealthily and I followed suit. I could hear the sound of heavy breathing coming from the darkness ahead, accompanied by growls. The growl of a monster that would be more than happy to kill us. From the sound, it was probably either a zombie dog, or worse, Cerberus that had been infected with D virus. It was a good thing we decided to be careful and slow rather than rushing in. Otherwise, we might have ended up dead or bitten. Peeking over the corner, I saw 3 mutated dogs with blood and saliva dripping down its maws. The dog was a mix of canine and reptilian features. It had a thick tail and a scaly skin that looked like it had been covered with armor. Its head resembled a wolf and it had 4 sharp claws instead of paws. Cerberus was patrolling the hall, sniffing around. It slowly moved toward our direction, and when it stopped at a spot where it could smell us, it barked loudly. It was a loud and piercing noise, loud enough to be heard by everyone in the building. Oh, fuck, I thought. I looked back at Ms. Rika and saw her taking her Desert Eagle out of its holster. I also took out my revolver and pointed at the Cerberus. As the dog started to turn its head towards us, Ms. Rika pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The bullet went right through the dog's skull. But that wasn't enough to put it down completely. It staggered back, blood flowing out of the wound. Miss Rika then shot it twice more in rapid succession. Each bullet pierced through its head, and finally it fell dead. One dead, only two left. "Cover me," she told me, and I nodded. Miss Rika sprinted toward the remaining dogs while firing at them. She was moving at full speed, so I quickly shot a cover fire to prevent the dogs from catching up to her. I managed to shoot one of the dogs in the head, leaving only one of them alive. Miss Rika was now right in front of it, her gun aimed straight at its face. The dog let out a howl, but she didn't give it time to do anything else. With a single pull of the trigger, her bullet went straight through its forehead and it collapsed instantly. "Nice," I commented as I approached her. She gave me a nod and said nothing else. "There are footprints on the ground," Miss Rika said as we walked down the hallway, looking for the entrance to the laboratory. "Yeah, and it leads to that door." I pointed at the end of the hallway. Based on the trace, the owner of the footprints were carefully moving. They tried to avoid any danger and didn't make any sound as they moved around. I couldn't tell exactly how many people were here, but I guessed it must have been around 10 people. 10, maybe? Miss Rika said. But they were in a rush, so they didn't check every room carefully. "Yeah, I agree with you," I replied with a smile. "Or they already know their target. There is one footstep clearly different from the others. It might belong to Leon." Miss Rika didn't say anything, just continued walking. When we reached the end of the corridor, she opened the door and stepped inside the room. Inside was a spacious area filled with shelves full of books. A few couches were placed around the middle of the room along with tables covered with papers. It looked like someone had left their research material here for future reference. "Nothing here," she muttered. I nodded. "Let's go upstairs," I said, and went out of the room. As I stepped outside the room, I noticed something on the ground. A trail of dried blood led into another room. It was fresh enough for me to smell the iron in the blood. The footprints also led to the room, so it was obvious that the previous visitor of the mansion came to that room too. Noticing the same thing, Miss Rika gestured to me to stop. I crouched and slowly approached the door. Miss Rika then kicked the door open and we both quickly pointed our gun at the room. There were no monsters, nor there was any sign of life. Instead, I found myself looking at a gruesome sight. Several dead bodies lay scattered across the floor, their heads crushed like grapes and their bodies mangled and twisted beyond recognition. "Jesus," Miss Rika muttered beside me, her expression turning grim. "They are STARS members, our people." "Yeah, and I can see that the weapon is still there. But the O's." I trailed off and looked at the bodies again. "Yeah, nothing. Just the weapons are left. It seemed they were attacked and killed before they even realized what was happening. Or maybe they are being attacked by an enemy with a weapon. A superhuman with strength to tear humans limb to limb, or something."